We will start. So, great pleasure to have Hania in the fireside chat. We have had events and talks before. So, but I guess not everybody has been in the field of sustainability. So, I would suggest that you would introduce yourself in a few words and also explain what brought you to the Web3 space.
So thank you so much, Tom, for that question. First of all, it's so nice to see such a full room at the end of the day, specifically after the Point Zero Forum, and I know we're all tired, so thank you so much for making the time. Very excited to be here. My name is Hania Othman. I'm the Director of Sustainable Impact and MEA at the HBAR Foundation. Have had the pleasure of working with Hedera for about the last 2.5, almost 3 years, and been focused on sustainability. Now, what does that mean? It means that we've been really focused on the fundamentals on how we can bring environmental assets on chain and build out high integrity systems. And one of the key things actually that we have been working on is building out digital public good infrastructure. Now, I don't want to go too deep into that. I'll tell you a little bit more about how I got into Web3 and specifically also Hedera. I have a background, mixed background, ecotourism, financial markets, and used to lead strategy at a startup where we were developing sustainability products. Before I joined Hedera, I was actually building out MRV systems. Now, for the ones that don't know that, MRV systems are measurement, reporting, and verification tools. And what we used to do is really trying to solve the problems within the environmental markets, which means we wanted to see how we can get more integrity, but also capital flowing into these markets, but also providing value based upon natural capital. Now, value, you can think about something like one of the most exciting things I used to work on, for example, was understanding what is the value of an elephant and what is the value of an elephant in our economy and how do you measure something like that. And we were thinking about that together with people from the IMF and a lot of different people coming together from, ecologists, biologists, technologists, and thinking about that. Came up to a number, which was research done by Fabio Berzaki and Ralph Shami from the IMF. And they came up to a number which was $2 million a year based upon the carbon kind of sequestration they would provide. Now, this value, you can imagine, can also be distributed to the caretakers of this environment where the elephant lives, which means that you're enabling new economies. So that's how I got into sustainability. And when I was looking at different layer ones, after when I was working with the startup, and we couldn't really scale because we were building out MRV systems, and it was one methodology, which is basically the rule set that defines the value, and we were charging quite a lot for that because it's a lot of work. So I looked at different layer ones, and Hedera was the only one that stood out for a simple reason. Because if you want to scale sustainability, you need to have corporate buy-in. If you don't have corporate buy-in, those are the off-takers of these types of credits, you can't really build a market of that. And there was no real focus in terms of the Web3 space, in terms of actual corporations. It was all retail focused. And you need to also kind of be proficient in compliance market in that kind of way. So Hedera has obviously governing council. You've heard about that today the whole day. And more so, I met Wes Geisenberger, who set up the Sustainable Impact Fund at that time, and who has been focusing on building out these kind of digital public good infrastructures in order to enable tools that would allow you to digitize methodologies, but also scale, I would say, impact and be able to trace that back to its origin. So that's how I got there, and I'm still here.
That's cool. That's cool. Thank you very much. I guess we wouldn't need to do an interview. You can speak for 50 minutes and everybody would listen to it. But you started one thing. You said you started with measurement, verification, and reportings. And Hedera is one of the most efficient layer one, energy efficient layer one, but you also provide tools, especially the Guardian, which is an open source tool where you work with, where digital measurement, verification and reporting is an important part of it. So if you could give us a few insight what the Guardian is, just a few sentences, and also who is the major user of, or could be the major user of that tool?
Yeah. So the way that I would describe the Guardian is a little bit less technical, if you will. It's more focused for me. The Guardian is an integrity system. It has basically cracked the code because if you look at environmental markets or environmental asset markets, they're underpinned by a lot of different rules. Those rules are called frameworks or methodologies or standards. Financial markets have the same thing. Now, these rules are created by people. And if you want to reiterate a rule or a rule set, in essence, it takes a lot of work, a lot of governance, and a lot of energy to pull those people together in order to understand what needs to be improved. And it's very hard to compare a variety of different methodologies next to another in order to understand what exactly needs to be improved. Now, what the Guardian has been able to do and cracked, in essence, is to create a singular, I would say, data flow and create and allow for machine-readable information to enter. So, enabling digitization of methodologies. This is the fundamental need in order to understand any form of market. What are the rules that underpin this market? And how do we understand those rules better instead of a one-by-one kind of comparison? So the Guardian is in essence a trust engine or an integrity system. You can consider it like it's a sleeve. Where you can pour the data in, and then it provides context to your data, but also it provides value to your data because you can compare the quality of the data of one methodology to another methodology and start really understanding what we mean by transparency. If a certain claim is being made in one methodology, for example, a framework that focuses on an added value of benefit sharing. They're claiming this is an SDG and this is supporting local people. We don't understand exactly how they're supporting local people. We just know that there is a little tag or a sticker on it, and therefore that asset has more value. What the Guardian does, it allows you to see through the methodology and understands exactly how is this supporting local people, what benefits actually go back to local communities, and how has the project developer invested in this. And then ideally what we're looking at is we want to connect the transparency, the data integrity, to having an increased value of these assets.
And if I may add that increased value also, you give access afterwards to tokenized carbon credits. And once you have tokenized the carbon credit, you also have an asset you can have on your balance sheet. And I would say that is also something that really gives you more impact and also more value, which you can collateralize afterwards. But you have been talking about also resilient system, and when you talk about resilient system in the context of those ESG data that you have in the Guardian, what do you mean with that?
Yeah. So before I answer that, I want to talk a little bit about, because our main mission also at the Sustainable Impact Fund, which is the tagline that we have been using, and probably everybody's sick of hearing it, but I'm going to say it again. It's basically bringing the balance sheet of the planet to the public ledger. And that means that understanding exactly what is on that balance sheet and allowing for that to be on chain because it's immutable. And that's the only place that it can actually live. Because if you're working with the environment or climate or biodiversity, water and so on, you can turn a system off. It means that there are opportunities where it might not be so high integrity in a way. So the balance sheet of the planet needs to live on a public ledger. Now, to get back to your question about what does resilience means. Now, resilience means adaptability. How do you build in adaptability in a certain kind of system that when something changes, it doesn't break? So if there are geopolitical risks or if they are climate risk or things that are going on in a business, how do you build a system that is flexible enough in order for it to adapt to changing rules? And that's exactly what the Guardian has been able to do, because if you would build this in a smart contract, you would have to create a new smart contract every single time. With the Guardian, you have a rule set that can be changed over time and therefore also adapted, but you have that full traceability in that. And that's why we think this is so fundamental. And obviously this is not the end-all solution to everything, but it is a fundamental piece of technology that is necessary in order to build smarter solutions on top of that, and really to build out a high integrity market that enables us to value nature and incorporate it into our economy.
I mean, I've been in the blockchain space for a while, and everybody's always looking for the good use cases, and I think sustainability is one of those, because it brings really more transparency into the game, and also more efficiency. If you have more efficiency in verification and reportings, then you really have a lasting impact. But in your view, the current state of sustainability and Web3, I mean, a lot of things are working, but there is a lot of things that aren't working yet. So if you could give us your opinion on that.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start with Web3 had a dream, right? And in essence, the dream of Web3 is to build new economic systems and new systems of value, right? Sustainability is nothing more than we're pushing the boundaries on the things that we currently value. And we're basically getting smarter about what we value, how we value it, and then how we include that into our current economy without breaking it. So blockchain, Web3, and sustainability are a perfect match, because you can create new economies in essence and then integrate that into our current economy through, ideally, eventually through DeFi and TradFi and have that all involved. But that's the dream, obviously. Now, we're not really creating new value systems yet. So we're still working on adoption, and that needs to happen. But that's why Web3 and sustainability work so well together, because it's a perfect solution to the problem that sustainability has, and specifically from a data discrepancy point of view. And we're at a stage where sustainability is not just going to fade away. So we need to find that solution, and Web3 provides that solution from that immutability perspective.
Yeah, hopefully it will not fade away. But when I look across the Atlantic Ocean and I see the political priorities shift a bit, and I also see that sustainability loses a bit of importance, and how you see that in your, or does that affect your projects? Do you see that projects where you had investors or people behind that say, okay, it's not in our focus anymore?
So it affects me personally, because I think that from a personal perspective, it's a bit frustrating to have the same conversations over and over again and try to convince people of the importance of sustainability. And I guess that there is still some form of understanding that sustainability and profit cannot live hand in hand. But I don't particularly think that it affects the projects, because the projects are based upon fundamentals. And those fundamentals are, at the end of the day, investor requirements, which have to do with forms of risk. And that risk is still sustainability, right? That have to do with resource allocation. That have to do with how are we going to future-proof our business. And sustainability is one of those elements in terms of how we need what we need to integrate in that decision-making process, in scenario analysis, in our investment processes, in order to future-proof our businesses. So my short answer is no. And my longer answer is, like, we need to get to work harder and stop the debate.
So imagine that now there would be no constraints. You would have the unlimited funds of Hedera and all the people that back you. Is there a wish or dream project you would like to work on and bring that in the Web3 space and on-chain?
Yeah, definitely. So I think we have already made a good way. First of all, starting with, the Guardian project has been a quite ambitious project. It's a project that digitizing, 70 plus methodology that we currently have, which is the largest digital public library in from methodologies, is quite a big endeavor, because it's quite complex and all the calculations and everything that needs to be open sourced and so on. Where we're heading to, ideally, is if we're creating a planetary kind of intelligence system that in essence has digitized all of the rules of our current economic system, whether it's from regulatory, financial regulatory market, sustainability, and so on, and allow us to take actual smart decisions on how we allocate resources, how we spend our funding as well, but also in terms of how we regenerate parts of our planet that need that. Think about fresh water. Fresh water is extremely important, but we're not thinking about how that's going to be regenerated. There is no calculation in terms of what is actually being taken from large corporations and what we're going to do in the next coming years. And that's a big risk. And a lot of businesses actually need water. So how are we going to solve that? And these are the things that we need to think about. So if we have an intelligence system that is able, where you can push a button and there would be decisions that would be verified, that would be a very cool thing and a very ambitious thing to have.
Thank you for sharing a very wonderful dream and vision. So the time is running out, but I would like to just open the discussion for 2 questions from the audience, if you may. Alex, is that, or one?
Maybe one question.
One question. Okay. We have time for 1 question. So who is the lucky one?
I think right now the biggest challenge is what we're actually working on is to connect it directly to financial markets. So building out financial market instruments. So things that I'm really keen on and interested in is bond structures, debt instruments. So that's currently, I would say, a challenge, but also an opportunity that we're definitely striving towards.